Well, all right. I was brainstorming on who are some quarterbacks I could make a every playoff game tier list because I think it's a fun type of video to make. And then I thought, well, why not Jared Goff? You know, he's someone who, while usually isn't considered one of the top of the line quarterbacks, has had a good amount of postseason success. So the way this tier list works is I am going to be evaluating, listing into 5 tiers how I think his performance was. So it's not necessarily team success. It's simply his performance as a whole. So yeah, let's just get into it. We're going to go in chronological order. I don't have these set up in chronological order. That's my bad, but that's how we're going to go. So we're starting off with the one that's at the end here, the Falcons taking on the Rams. This was Jared Goff's first postseason game. This was, if you remember, his first year. It went horrible with Jeff Fisher. Year 2 goes really well with Sean McVay. Sean McVay, quote unquote, fixes Jared Goff. At least that was the the narrative. Maybe it was Jeff Fisher was just doing a really bad job. Probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But nevertheless, Goff had a really good year. I didn't think this was his best game. And again, the Falcons were very good this year. All of that stuff is true, but this wasn't the year that the Falcons went to the Super Bowl. This was the year after the Falcons went to the Super Bowl, but I didn't think this was Goff's best day, which is kind of expected for someone playing in their first playoff game. That kind of usually happens, but I thought that he was a bit underwhelming in this one. Not a disaster, just, you maybe want to see a little bit more from Goff. Weren't quite able to get it here, so, which again, kind of expected, I thought. So then we have the next year, where another good year, and this time I think the Rams went from like a solid team, like, okay, no, this is a really good team that could be like a championship contender, and then he would go to the playoffs where they played the Cowboys and played them pretty well. I mean, like, it wasn't a dominant performance. You look at Goff's numbers, they're nothing to write home about, a 74.4 passer rating, but the Rams as a whole played pretty well. I'm going to put this in the met expectations camp. I don't think it was like otherworldly by him or anything, but it was solid. So, hey, you had the bye week. You did a pretty good job. You're now ready to play the New Orleans Saints in the Superdome. So this is not, you're not expecting this to be great. And for Goff, it was a bit of an up and down game to start. Everyone, obviously, when you think of this game, you remember the no call. Right? That's just what you think of when you remember this game. But I think it's fair to say Goff had a really good drive towards the end there and had a really good play in overtime to get them just on the outside of field goal range for where they were able to win. So while I wouldn't say this was his play for play best game, I think it was maybe his best moment in a playoff game. I'm going to put this in the still really good tier. That's kind of how I view it. So then the next game happened. I mean, you already know. I don't have to set it up. The Super Bowl, it's one to forget. It just was. It was a bad game. I mean, Bill Belichick really just kind of dominated Jared Goff in that one. I think Belichick doing these slightly different things that, running defenses Goff had never really seen before. It was certainly a feather in Belichick's cap, but essentially what Belichick was doing was forcing Goff to have to be a playmaker, forcing him to have to, when he thinks that something is going to work, he takes a snap, realizes it doesn't work, have to do something else, and Goff's improved a lot at that. In 2018, that was just not something Goff was really very good at doing, and you saw it with him making way too many mistakes, and ultimately, being a big reason why the Rams lost the Super Bowl. So, yeah, that's certainly one to forget. But then the Rams made the playoffs again. The following, wasn't the following year, it was actually 2 years later, they make the playoffs again, and, okay, well, let's see what Goff can do this time. They played the Seattle Seahawks, so it's this one here that we're discussing. And again, it was kind of a really good team performance. They didn't really have Goff play that much. Goff did his job. He had a below 500 completion percentage, but if you look at the game, like he still played pretty well. He went 9 for 19. I mean, they didn't have him. He had 9 completions, but they just didn't need him that much in it. So this was another met expectations performance for me personally. We then have the Packers game. The Packers game was, I thought, a pretty all right game. It didn't go well for the Rams. The Packers were the better team. The Packers won that one kind of handedly. But I actually thought Goff played all right in that one. I think that when he had to kind of do things when things were going wrong, he was able to do it. It just they kind of got behind. They just weren't weren't a better team in that one. They just weren't. But I'm going to put that in still really good. I thought he played pretty well there. So, okay. Well, so all that happens. That's his Rams tenure, which went okay. But again, I think that, you see he never had one of his best games with the Rams, and there were some moments where there was room for improvement. And so that's why the Rams ultimately made the decision to move off of Goff and say, you know what? Let's see if we can find something better in this scenario. So they did. They got Matthew Stafford, who, I would say is a better quarterback. Matthew Stafford went on a great run. They won a Super Bowl where he had many of his best games in that postseason run. So Jared Goff goes to the Lions. Many thought was just kind of a cap dump at that point, but plays well enough that he keeps the starting job. They have a good year, largely due to him, and they make the playoffs last year. And they would play Matthew Stafford, which was super interesting. And while I thought Stafford was great in that game, I also thought Goff was really good in that game. I'm still not sure if I would say it's one of his best performances, but he was really... You know what? Maybe I would, actually. I think it was one of his best performances. I think he was really just consistently making good throws. The box score stats were impressive. He was over 10 yards per attempt in that game, had a passer rating of over 120, and I thought that maybe, I thought that he was really good as well. Forget about the box score. I just thought he played well. So, yeah, I'm gonna put him there, and then with the... in the Buccaneers game, he did have that one. He had a kind of a dumb mistake in each of these two games where against the Rams, he just threw the ball backwards on one play, and luckily they recovered. In this game against the Buccaneers at the goal line, he just threw it right to Jamel Dean, a Buccaneers defensive back, and luckily for him, Dean dropped it. Other than that, though, he again played really consistently well, put the ball in the right spot. So I thought he was still really good. You could talk me into one of his best here as well. And then finally, we have the final game that we've seen from Goff so far. I mean, he's going to play next year. I'm just saying, the last game we saw him was against the 49ers, which obviously there was a moment when we all thought the Lions were going to the Super Bowl. They were going to play the Chiefs, who they already beat in the regular season. Here we go. Didn't quite work out that way, but I don't really think it was largely due to the fault of Goff. If you remember, there was all those heat on the fourth down calls. One of them, he made a good throw that should have resulted in a completion. The other, there just wasn't much he can do. There's not a lot, I kind of think he was really good in this game, actually. Is it a crazy hot take to say this is also one of his best games? I thought that he was, again, consistently putting the ball in the right spot, getting the ball to the right player. I don't know. I think you could argue that this is one of his best, and I think you could argue that the Tampa Bay game against Tampa Bay might have been one of his best as well. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I am going to do that. I think I'm going to put his 3 Lions games as his best 3 playoff games, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, hey, not someone who over the course of his career has always risen to the moment, but lately has been doing a great job of doing that. And is it really fair to hold against him too much the underwhelming game against the Falcons when it was his first game, and then getting, outboxed by Bill Belichick, who's, pretty good at this stuff, kind of knows what he's doing. I don't know if it's fully fair to say all of it. Either way, I'm sure Lions fans feel pretty happy about the, how the top of this list has gone. So yeah, I don't know. That's how I view Jared Goff. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.